So before I get started with that, somebody earlier, I think it may have actually been Colin, asked me for some interactive buttons and stuff. And I decided to go ahead and start with these, which are just the generic pressure plate push buttons. You step on them, and as you can see, it takes the spikes down. Each one does a different one. And I tried to make a mechanic for picking up a barrel and dropping it on there the way Zelda quests do, but I really couldn't do it and I didn't have enough time, so I just went with some basic push blocks. And these guys were actually surprisingly easy. There's only really one piece to them. It's just the coin. The ring doesn't actually have anything in it. It's just there for aesthetic purposes. The coin, for each of detect, which just means anything that is in its detect range, which the detect range is slightly smaller than the diameter of the coin, which means you literally have to be on top of the coin for it to detect you. And I felt that since I'm using a circular object, detect being a sphere would probably be the best sensor, because you could use trigger zone, you could use bump, you could use all kinds of things, but it wouldn't really work as good. Like for instance, if you used bump would trigger like that, since it's literally the very first second that you come in contact, and that would look kind of strange. So I use detect, because then you at least have to kind of get on top of it. So when detect, if it is not the ring, and that is in-world picked specifically the ring that it's attached to, object variable target equals it, and it in this case is whatever it is detecting. So whenever it detects something that's not the ring, the strips power off, which means the spikes come down. It plays the noise, and then it decrements its position a tiny little bit, so it looks like the button's pushed down. And then no longer meaning just the instant that it no longer detects the target, it plays the other sound, it increments back up, and it turns spikes back on. So that's actually all there is to it. It's pretty small. Double blade like Kira. I don't know what that is. The buttons do actually press down. I don't know if you missed that, but if you get in and look at them, they do actually... Oh, come on. And I mean, I guess I could make it a slightly bigger, pushing down. It's kind of hard to tell. But they do push down. That is what you meant, right? Yeah, you can post an image, it's fine. A land speeder. I might do that. Because I actually made a giant dragonfly you could get on and fly around. Yeah, I'll get you the code. Just let me know when you got that part, and then I'll scroll down. Double-bladed sword. That will be extremely simple. I will in fact make one of those for you in a little while. Don't let me forget. Colin, once you get this written down, let me know, and I'll scroll down and show the rest. All right. And those 3 lines. Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, so projectspark.org, the community site. It was planned to go down this weekend for an upgrade from vBulletin version 4 to vBulletin version 5. Well, this afternoon, sort of to try to get ready for that transition, Mark was uninstalling some of the plugins that we had, and one of them failed in the uninstallation and corrupted the database. So that's why the site went weird, and that's why the site went down. So right now, they're actually updating to vBulletin 5 ahead of schedule. So we should be getting back up a little earlier, hopefully, than the Tuesday that we projected. So that's what's going on with .org. It's not down permanently, it's actually being upgraded. And once the form is upgraded, we are going to get an upgraded homepage as well, with articles and news and media, the whole shebang. So it's going to be great. So stay tuned. So the other thing I wanted to show, before I get into some stuff, is I don't know if any of you guys made the connection, but that puzzle over there is kind of like Zelda. Well, these little laser guys are a lot like Zelda too. I guess I had Zelda on the mind. All it does is it spins, it targets. I can't make it spin any slower with the basic code, and I don't really feel like going super in depth into this, but basically it's using a raycast and drawing a line, and as long as it doesn't see me, it just keeps on doing that. But as soon as it sees me, it starts targeting me. And it's not affected by any other props, it's just me, which is why this little wall's there. And 3 seconds after it can no longer see me, it goes back to what it was doing. And I made the donut-shaped hill actually to make a point. If you'll notice, the raycast does not go through the terrain. It stops. There's a couple different ways you can do... Whoa, that was loud. A couple of different ways you can do raycasts. If you don't put any of the modifiers for object to terrain, it basically considers hitting everything. Like if I put in object, unless I'm remembering this wrong, it should... Whoa. Accidentally... Nope, never mind. I did that wrong. Well, whatever. Anyway. I made it generic so that it could hit everything and it would know where it's hitting at all times, but it only responds to hitting me. That's how it works. Use that for goblins getting up out of water. What, the raycast? Hitting terrain? I'm not totally sure what you're referring to. Okay. Anyway. On to basic props. If you've never seen any of my original videos, I will quickly go over some of the basics of, I guess, how glued assemblies work. I'll just take a couple random things. So when you're looking at stuff in the editor, the green rotational arrow is always the object's forward. So when I say forward, I do actually mean the direction forward in the code tiles. The green arrow always coincides with forward. The red arrow always coincides with left. And the blue arrow, wait a minute, that's not right. I'll do it with this one, it's easier to see. Blue arrow's left, red arrow's up. That's right. And that does not ever change, even when you rotate something. The object still considers the green to be its forward. No matter which direction it's actually pointing, that's still its forward. Now, I don't know if you've seen the polls, but one of the options for things having to do with objects was to get object relative positioning arrows like these here. And when you're looking at this, it looks like it's object relative. No, getting rid of that damn zoom is also something. Oh my god. Okay. Here we go. It's not cooperating. I wanted to make a point. Okay, there you go. You'll notice it's slightly off-centered. It seems like the arrows are object-oriented when you first get into them, but that's only because the objects are aligned to the grid originally. But once you start rotating them, you can tell they're not actually object-related, they're world-related. So you have to be careful of that. It makes things a little bit more difficult to move around. Like if I wanted to slide this piece of rope in the direction it's pointing, I can't really, because the objects, the positioning arrows are not object-oriented, they're world-oriented. So we're trying to get that changed. But for now, this is how it works. And for keyboard users, I know a lot of people have been having trouble finding how you get to rotational arrows. All you have to do is click the green arrow, and it brings up the other rotational arrows. And then you click the yellow spiral, and then it goes back to the directional arrows. And when you're gluing props, the first prop that you select, once you do multi-edit and you can start selecting everything, the first prop you select becomes the center of the new assembly. So you'll notice I selected the coin first, so the coin is actually the center of rotation. I'll show you the other one too. Now by clicking the rope first, the rope is the center. And it's not always the center of the prop, it is wherever the prop's original position location is. And different props use things different. Like for instance, the spheres, it is actually in the very center of the object. You can rotate it from any side and it stays perfectly centered. I hate that zoom. Things like the coin and these rings, there's this one and there's the primitive ring as well. Their attach location is actually right on the bottom. Maybe it is just the other one. And the rope and all the different poles, like this well, this one here, notice how it rotates just from the one end. Oh my god, this auto zoom is driving me nuts. All the different poles. Some of the other things, like weapons, do it from the hold point. So there's lots of different places where they actually have the built-in center. So you'll notice whenever I click on here and I start the glue from the rope to the coin, instead of being at the center of the piece of rope, the pivot point is actually at that far end of the rope because it preserves the location on the rope. So that's another thing to keep in mind. It can sometimes make things more complicated, but sometimes it actually lets you do some fancy stuff, or it actually makes your life a lot easier whenever you're trying to glue complicated stuff. The difference between attaching and gluing. So when you glue something, you are in essence making the objects into one piece. So they behave as one thing. I could put a brain into it to turn. Right, let me give a character over here. And you'll notice that it's acting very strange. Well, that's because the brains inside of each individual piece are actually preserved. So I have turned slowly on the whole entire glued assembly. If I unglue it, you'll notice there is actually a yaw slowly inherently built into the coin. So the coin was doing both moves. It was doing yaw and it was doing turn. The rope was only doing turn because that's the only brain that it has in it. So whenever you're doing glue, if there's multiple brains, like how the coin had its own brain, and it did not coincide with the whole assembly's brain, anything you glue to that coin won't actually follow its movement. And I can show that again in a different way. Yaw slowly. So I'm going to use two. Oh man. All right. So remember, the coin has yaw slowly in it. I'm going to glue this piece of rope, and I'm going to attach this piece of rope. And the way attach works, whatever object you want to attach to something else, you click that object, and then you click the object you want to attach it to. Because if you do it the other way around, then the main object will try to follow the single object, and that's obviously not okay. And if you look at it, let me do it again, because that's, you can't tell. The direction that the chain is animated in shows you which one is attached to which one. So obviously this is attached to that. And to unattach all you have to do is the same movement you did to attach them. You just click and click, and it'll actually get rid of any attachments. But okay, so back to this. Remember that the coin has yaw slowly. The coin and this piece of rope are glued. This piece of rope is just attached to this assembly. I didn't do that right. I forgot one step. So unattach this. Got to put the turn brain back in here. I'll show you again. So, that piece of rope is turning. The coin is also turning, as you can see that it is turning sideways with the rope, but it's yawing as well, which is why it's swiveling upwards. I feel like I'm rambling and this is not making any sense, but hopefully this will make it make sense. So now, this piece of rope is attached to this assembly that is all of it is turning. So now it's turning with the assembly. If I were to unattach it and glue it, it won't follow. So that's the difference. Attach forces it to follow whatever you glue it to. Glue, all it does is track the position. And it's currently the center position of this assembly is the coin, the center of the coin. So the best way to use glue is before you do any animation, put all your props together and then glue them. And then if you have anything that needs to follow the animation, you attach it later. So hopefully that makes sense. And as you practice with it, you'll find the different times in which that's actually better to do one or the other. Because there are actually times like, I'll use this as an example. This is not actually built using glue or anything, but it is actually a perfect example. Wait. Let me turn its power on real quick. So this is actually a perfect example. You can grab this thing and you can move it around and it behaves as if it's one part. And I realize I'm in edit mode, but it would be the same thing if it were in play mode. It has stationary parts, it has moving parts, but it moves around and behaves as one piece. You can actually accomplish that same exact thing using glue. If you have something where you want just one part to move. And I didn't bother to line that up, but say for instance you're building a machine and you had something like this turning in the machine and it wasn't actually doing anything, it was just a visual effect. Well, you could actually put the code into that piece and then glue the whole thing together and it would be fine because you were never trying to make anything follow that animation. You're just using it basically for an aesthetic purpose. Goodbye. Mike, are you still here? I haven't seen you talk in a while. I'm about to get into what you wanted to see. But yeah, guys, give me ideas. Oh, maybe I'll just do a land speeder. Listening and watching. Okay, so Mike asked me to show some tips and tricks basically for using the controller to build, because I know a lot of people are actually using the mouse predominantly. I actually use the controller predominantly, and then I switch over and I use the mouse for certain things. So much like terrain editing, the controller is good for some things and the mouse is good for some things. Using it on props is the same. The controller does way better on some things. The mouse does way better on some things. So give me an idea of something to build, and I'll build it. And I will explain all of this. And while you guys are coming up with ideas, I'll ramble. So you'll notice I have lots of props laying around. Every time I'm about to build something, I always drag a bunch of props out and I toss them on the ground, kind of like a painter's palette. Every time you start and you're going to build a prop, always, always, always remember to remove the default brains. Otherwise, you will get tons of strange effects. Like I built a spaceship one time that anytime you bumped it, half of it deleted itself and you got poisoned because I built it out of poison jars and forgot to take the brain out. And the other half of the spaceship, you could interact with it and it would start ringing like a bell. So weird stuff will happen. Just remember to delete the brain and to always go in and change the physics to fixed. Otherwise, other bad stuff will happen and the pieces will shoot apart and fly off the screen and bad stuff happens. So, two major things. Remove the brain, change the physics to fixed. The gear thingy I was showing. The gear thingy is actually just a prop. It's just the prop called a large crank. So, I didn't make that. It's just a prop. I could make anything with gears you'd like to see. In fact, I could just make a custom gear out of primitives real quick. Oh, and this is actually a perfect opportunity. Last week, I showed how to easily glue things and get them perfectly, I guess perfectly spaced around a circle. Let me find out if this thing gets small enough, then we're in business. Yes, okay, so. First things first, whenever you're, I guess basically blocking in a new object, it's really, really helpful to turn on Snap to Grid. And if you don't know where Snap to Grid is, it's actually this little magnet icon over here. Or if you hold down on the D-pad on the controller, you'll actually turn Snap to Grid on and off. And I find for aligning stuff and getting, let's see if I got this. Nope. Nope. I'm gonna start over. Sometimes whenever you get things out of alignment, even when you get them back to zero, they still don't stay in alignment because the first instant you touch them, then they go flying off. And I don't understand why that is. Alright, so. I'm going to make a custom gear. And this is something that is a very good example. Putting stuff in quickly. Very easy with the controller. You have full 3D control. Very quickly, you can put it anywhere you want it. If you're using the mouse, you have to put it down, you have to click it, you have to grab the arrows, and you can only move in one direction at a time. So it's a lot slower. However, the controller moves extremely quick. you don't get a very good fine control on it. Whereas these arrows, you can move it in the tiniest little, practically pixel perfect increments, and you can place things exactly where you want them and how you want them. So it's highly useful. And that is one of the main differences between the controller and the mouse. Also, zooming is almost non-existent on the controller. You have 3 levels, and you access those 3 levels by clicking down on the left or the right thumbstick as if it was a button, and you get 3 levels of zoom. And all 3 of those levels of zoom are completely useless. So that's no good. With the mouse, you can zoom into quite a bit fewer, or quite a bit more smaller, like fine-tuned levels of zoom. So, and also, it will zoom in and out from wherever your cursor's at. Like, so if there's a prop over here you want to look at, you can just zoom into it. Prop over here I want to look at, just zoom into it. You can't do that with the controller, because with the controller, your crosshair is always fixed right into center. So you will always zoom relative to the center of the screen. So that's another major difference. When you use the controller, it doesn't move up and down. X and Y move up and down on the controller. Q and E move up and down on the keyboard. As I'm sure you know, but I'm just saying that for other people. R and F are actually the keyboard zooms, and they are still relative to the mouse position in the world. So you can use either middle mouse wheel or you can use R and F. Ring, you might be having a lag issue. If you turn the stream quality down to low, you might get a better connection. And Michael, if you click down on the right thumbstick, you get 3 levels of zoom with the controller. So click it, not the direction down, but if you push it down like a button. With the controller, the grab button is actually the right trigger. So you can grab in place with the right trigger. So for this trick, say I want a gear, and we'll just say that it's a crappy gear with only a couple teeth on it. So I'll use the 8 cardinal directions. All you do, you place your whatever circle object you got, you place whatever you want to use for your tooth, then you duplicate it and get 8 of them. And I'll put one more just in case, because sometimes weird things happen. And here's another thing. And for an example of when I switch in between the controller and the mouse. Multi-edit is way easier with the mouse because you can point directly at something and you can click it, and it seems like you have a lot better control because you can point in between objects a lot easier. If the objects are right next to each other, you can target them a lot better. Which with the controller, what you get is this sphere that whatever is kind of remotely closest to the sphere is what gets highlighted. So it becomes extremely difficult to pick exactly what you want when there's a bunch of objects right next to each other. The way you can combat that, however, is left trigger. Hold on, not a multi-edit. Left trigger will actually cycle between every object that you have in your viewable screen. On the mouse, it's right. No, it's less. Which one is it? Come on. I think they changed it in the last patch because it's not working anymore. It used to be if you left clicked. Oh, there we go. If you have things overlapping and you left click, it will actually cycle between them. So there's that. Yeah, okay. But anyway, evenly spacing. Little trick. Why did that move? That's awful. Well, it's not going to work with this damn ring. The attach point on this ring, for some reason, is right on the edge rather than in the center, which I should have actually known because I just said that a minute ago. But I wasn't thinking. So we're going to go ahead and use a coin. Because coins don't have that problem. Who is upvoting me? I don't ever get upvotes. Alright, back in business. So, duplicate it, get a whole bunch of them. Turn Synapse Grid back on. Multi-edit, grab it, and glue one of them, and leave the rest alone. No. And you can actually glue multiple levels of things. So basically you can glue glued items together, is all I'm really getting at. And that allows you to glue one at a time, rotate the main body, and get an absolutely perfect spacing. And it's good for things, obviously, other than gears, but that's what I'm working on now. And like I said, I'm doing this with the mouse. Well, I'm doing the clicking with the mouse, but I'm actually doing the rotation with the controller because for some reason I find rotation with the controller much easier to deal with. And then once you're done, there's actually an error where having a bunch of glued props can cause crashes. So whenever possible, if you're just making one stationary object, unglue it as much as you can, all the way down to the very base. You don't want to have too many layers that are unnecessary. So I'll just keep ungluing this until it's all the way down to its component parts. Okay, so it's down to its component parts. Now, when you're going to glue a new assembly, the direction south in the world, which is the direction the player is standing when you first open an empty world is south. You can find it through code if you were to make a pointer and say point south or whatever, but just for easy reference, your guy is always pointing south whenever you first start. Whenever you glue a new assembly, and I'll just show you, up is currently up on this coin. Remember that when the first thing you click becomes the center, you can drag, grab a bunch of stuff. So now forward becomes south, or rather south becomes forward on this new assembly. Remember the key, or the coin, I cannot talk today. The coin's forward was up, but now it's south. So that's a constant. So anytime you're building anything that you're going to program to move, like a car, an airplane, a custom character, anything you do that you want, or projectile even, keep it in mind even for projectiles. Anything that you're going to somehow through code to move, and you're going to want to use forward because it's the easiest thing you can possibly do. Place it in the world facing south and then glue it, and then your code will be way easier to deal with. You only get 90-degree increments when you're using Snap-to-Grid, you mean? Okay, so controller rotation. You have two options. You can either just hover over and hold down the left bumper and you will get the menu. And then you have along the bottom here, you use the D-pad left and right to cycle between these options. And then you use the left thumbstick to actually trigger the options. And it should move automatically in 45-degree increments. It just does it automatically with Snap-to-Grid. In fact, when you're using a controller, when you're using a mouse, I thought that it did that too. Yeah, it just automatically does 45 degrees. So yeah, I'm not really sure why yours is behaving that way, because that's actually one of the baked-in features. I don't think, I'm pretty sure there's no option that could be causing that to happen for you. Not that I've ever seen. Yeah, frankly, I have no idea why that would be. And as usual, I say one thing and then do exactly the opposite. I forgot to take the brain out of the coin. Actually, while I'm here, just going to recolor this thing. You're using the stone ring. Let me grab one of those in a second here. Because I'm fairly positive okay. Snap to grid on. Grab it. 45 degrees. I really don't know what's happening with you. It sounds like you might be experiencing some kind of odd bug. Turn it without the grid, just to any random angle. Turn the grid on, and I still get 45 degrees. I think you might be experiencing what I was talking about before. Sometimes, if you, I think what triggers it is if you have more than one axis that's not equal, and then you try to even it out. That's when you start getting into weirdness. But it still moves in 45 degree increments. It just doesn't match up to 45 degrees, 90 degrees, you know, the actual 45 degree increments. It doesn't match up to them perfectly, but it does still move in 45 degree increments. But it gets trapped in this wonky orientation and nothing you can do. Even if you stop, turn off snap to grid, and manually put it back, like, I'm not sure exactly what happens, but it just gets trapped. And then I don't know, it just gets stuck and it's impossible to do anything with. But yeah, so no reset. One thing that you might be able to do is swap mesh with itself, but that probably still preserves the orientation. Yes. Although, no, it's still, yeah, you're still getting a slight little bit of weirdness. And I think what it is it's actually less than a degree, but it only shows 1 degree. Which is why you can have zeros and only 1 degree off here, but if I move this one, I've got 1 degree off on both of them, because it must be rounding anything less than a full degree. But yeah, so things do get a little wonky. So my advice is, this is why I'd use snap to grid first. Use snap to grid, get it as close as humanly possible with the controller. Why did you do that? I'm getting some kind of strange... Yeah, okay, here we go. So, I want to put this circle onto the corner of this box. With Snap to Grid, get it as close as you can. Come on. Okay, so evidently... Okay, this is not... We'll call that as close as I can get it. Then once you're happy, then turn off Snap to Grid and switch over to the mouse. And then little by little, get it where you want it. And this is really only if you're doing stuff that just has to be perfect. Because if you're just doing basic stuff, I mean, everything in this game is asymmetrical. So a lot of the time, people won't even notice. There you go. That's pretty much just about even on that corner. So yeah, did anybody have any questions so far? Go ahead and show you the completed gear that I did not put a brain in. So it does me no good. What is happening? Oh, I can't use turn. I have to use, I think, yaw. There we go. Gears. Moose, it's because they want you to buy more. It's not 41, Abra. It is in fact cheesecake. Or 42. See, that just goes to show I am not a fan of Hitchhiker's Guide. Babies come from cabbages. In fact, so do squirrels. Dun, 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 dun. What am I doing? And that's where babies come from. But we don't have any babies, so I'll use squirrels. I actually put lava into what I called the geological patch. Not patch. I can't speak. Pack. In the content pack poll, which you'll be able to get access to the polls again when the .org site comes back up. But geological content pack. We're talking bats, stalagmites, stalactites, mineral seeps, lava, the whole shebang. Very good pack, in my opinion. So, if you guys vote for that, hopefully maybe we'll get some lava for real. And a cabbage patch of evil squirrels. Okay, so did any of you guys actually come up with an idea of what you'd like me to build so that I can ramble on about... Oh, wait. I did not build anything important yet. So I want to show you this. My buddy Camilo. This is a fantastic use of props. He took a character, made it invisible, and he animated this with absolutely no math. Everything is done with little logic cubes and point in this direction and that direction, but no math. And it's not perfect yet, but it's pretty damn cool. Where's the roar? And the roar is done. It's got logic cubes in kind of a starburst sort of fashion in front of the head, and all it does is it takes the prop and it has its forward point towards one cube or the other. No math. So yeah. Evidently it doesn't like jumping very well or rolling. But yeah. Lots and lots and lots of stuff that you can do with props. And a big fat thumbs up. Well, Aber, you were allowed to vote more than one thing. It was a multiple selection poll. Basically, my rule of thumb was vote for 50% of the options or less. That way we can get kind of a varied aggregate. So, what do you guys want to see? Kelly, are you happy with what I've said so far as what you asked me, or is there more that you'd like to hear? How much resources are used in what? In that dragon? That wasn't mine, I don't know. I guess I'll just make some more weapons. Somebody asked me for weapons. I will ramble some more while making weapons. So somebody wanted... Somebody wanted to... Oh, no. I broke it. So, I guess first things first. Unglue. I find the absolute best prop for making weapons is the rope, which might sound silly, but there's basically nothing else that is long and slender that you can use for any kind of hilt or the pole for a spear or anything like that. There's nothing. I use rope in almost every single object. I tried using torches and stuff. Like this is a torch. It works pretty good. It depends on what you're doing. Like this mace is a torch, so that's kind of cool. This is actually a defense post for the whole entire thing. That works pretty good too. But it's really specific, and it has a curve to it. And like the only actual pole prop that we have, well, there's two. There's this one with the curly Q at the end, but it's curved. And then there's this one that does shrink down pretty good, but it is really curved. So any kind of spear or anything you try to make out of that is going to be kind of just strange looking, basically, because it's curved. So that's no good, in my opinion. That's no good at all. So the rope prop is absolutely invaluable in weapon making. Also, the big huge log pillar. It looks really, really nice, and it makes transitions from the rope prop to other props a lot easier. However, in its current state, it can't shrink down past this size, which is why this spear can't get any big or can't get any smaller. Which is why this spear is almost too big. So if it could scroll down or scale down a little bit more, it would also be super, super awesome. Although, I mean, there's been a couple of cases where I was able to use it and it wasn't a problem. Like in this mace, I'm using it as the main piece, and I'm using it as the entire weapon for this. It's basically just a wooden cudgel. So it still has its place. Oddly enough, acorns make really good end pieces. Another thing I have found, depending on what else you use, I used a log, but if you recolor the crystal, it makes a really good end piece. And if you come on. If your weapon is thick enough otherwise, you can actually hide a bolt in there, because the bolt has this really good wrapped end with a little piece of metal sticking out, so it looks like the spike on the hilt of a weapon. But since it has the fletchings at the end, it can only go into bigger weapons. Otherwise you have to come up with something else, like the acorn or the crystal work sometimes. And there's been a couple other things I did, but yeah. As I keep saying in all of my streams, don't get too hung up on what the object actually is. Just look at the shape of the object. Like this is made out of coins and two primitive cylinders. God, I can't talk at all today. But it looks like a big massive metal club. This is made out of crystals and a stone sphere and two coins. But it makes a pretty convincing mace. Stone and rock. This is literally just two of the exact same axe flipped sideways. This is a bunch of bones and a couple skulls. Or I guess it's actually one bone and a bunch of skulls. And then multicolored crystals. This is actually just a coin and one desert rock repeated a bunch of times. Recoloring is your friend. You can make anything look like something else. It's surprising how well it works. There's a couple of things that you can't really recolor that great because they have a lot of inherent color to them, like the grayscale that they're made out of. It doesn't really allow for very convincing colors, like the stone, this stone sphere right here. It's got a lot of gray to it anyway, so all of your colors kind of get muddied. But it's still pretty cool. But back to what I was doing. Double-sided sword thing. Hold on, I'm sorry, I'm just looking to see if you guys have said anything to me. Cheesecake, thank you, sir. Okay, you have said nothing to me. I will continue. So we're looking for something that would make a good... Nah, I don't want to use that. Maybe I'll use this one. See if it can get small enough. Oh yeah. Alright, so, as usual, Snap to Grid is your friend. Also, there's no problem with gluing stuff together ahead of time to make it easier to maneuver around in 3D space. Because otherwise you're going to be fighting it, and you don't want to fight it. So especially whenever you're trying to pivot things around, using Snap to Grid is absolutely invaluable. As any of you that actually do this on a regular basis will come to find out. Follow my own rules. Get rid of the brain, get rid of the physics. But I never remember to do it. Even though I know that it's a good idea, I still never remember to do it. Maybe a That might be cool. No, it's got too much of a curve to it. See, I love this game. There's probably nobody that loves this game as much as I love this game. But the asymmetry is beginning to drive me nuts. I just want some damn symmetrical props that I could use to make custom stuff. And again, this is a good example. Move stuff around with the controller, then switch to the mouse and fine tune it, because you get much better control. Now I just got to figure out some kind of transition. There's another example. You get way finer control over scale. Whoops. Not so sure I like that. So there's a base for the weapon, and then to make them actually wieldable, the easiest way is to put an invisible weapon inside them somehow. Whenever you build a weapon out of more than one actual weapon, like this has a sword on either end, all weapons and all equipable items have what they call a hold point, which obviously is right on the handle, but they're sort of like baked into the item. So whenever you have these glued, right now it has two hold points on it, one at either sword. Even though it's one big glued prop, that doesn't erase the hold points for whatever reason. And whenever you go to grab it, it picks one or the other. And I'm not really sure what the criteria is, but it always grabs one of the possible hold points, and it stays with that one all the time. I don't know if it's maybe the first one you grabbed whenever you were gluing it or what. So the easiest way to define a custom hold point is to put an invisible weapon that has all of the physics and everything on it. You see, I've got the physics, whoops, I got the physics on this still. The weapon itself has no physics. It's fixed. Then, as I was explaining before, you use attach because you want the custom weapon to follow the movement of the invisible weapon, because technically your character will be holding the invisible weapon and the custom weapon is just kind of there for show, but the invisible weapon is doing all of the brain work. And then you, whoa, well, that didn't work out so well. Let's try that again. Alright. Let's see if it will be easy this time. Alright, there we go. And then you just ease them together to where the handle of the invisible weapon is inside the geometry of your custom weapon, exactly where you want the character to hold it. So then once you get into the level, crap. I must have forgotten to take, oh no, that's the rocket. Okay. So I have a spear that's usable. But I also want to show you, this is why you've got to remember to take the brains out. Weird stuff will happen otherwise. So there you have it. I never remember to do my own biggest rules, and it always bites me in the butt. But at least it's relative. At least it's relatively easy to fix. Okay, so the fruit doesn't have anything in it. Problem solved. And it's a little bit big for him. It's colliding with the ground, but you get the idea. Yeah, they don't clip too bad because the animations for the equipable items by default are actually pretty decent. So as long as you build onto the geometry, like if I was to make something at a right angle, like sticking out of the side of a sword, or I'm using the, where is it at? This is actually what I'm using, this little fire poker. So, I mean, if I built something coming out of the side of it, it becomes a little more tricky. But something like a spear that's just a straight line, it's not so bad. Or if you build something thicker like this, you'll sometimes get issues. See how it's clipping through his shoulder armor because it's so big. But in general, so there's my wooden club. Shields are a little bit harder. You can't make custom shields without some clipping issues most of the time. The only way really to get around it is you have to, I'll just show you. Where's the shield? There's a shield. So you'll notice I've got the shield original invisible, and then I have the custom shield visible. It's exactly like doing the weapons. And you'll also notice, if I can get to a good position here, the shield's sitting at kind of a funky angle. This shield is perfectly level, even though it kind of doesn't look like it because of the rocks, but it's pretty level. But it is sitting at a funky angle to the original shield because that is the only way I could get it to not clip. The two big horns, I guess, if you, whatever you want to call them, these two big parts here, were clipping right through the guy's face. And like this shield right here, I'll show you on the tribal girl. Where is she at? I had to turn it to a weird angle down her arm. Otherwise it clipped right through her face. But it still does its job. They're just more finicky. Like here's your example of dual wielding. It appears that he's dual wielding, but in reality he's not. He's actually holding an invisible knife that you can't see, and it gives me the knife attack motions. But those claws are actually attached to his wrists, which is part of the forearm. Because if I attach them to his hands, then they'd be flopping around, because the hands move a lot more than the wrists do. So, I don't know, it's weird. Alright, Broken, take it easy. Echo, hi there. What time is your stream? I don't want to run over on you. Is it in half an hour, or am I half an hour over on you? Well, the good reason for doing this you can edit the attack value, like the damage done, just on the little fake weapon, instead of having to unglue the props and edit on both of the individual swords. So it actually makes making them custom a lot easier. Oh, Echo, I'm sorry to hear that, man. Hopefully you get that straightened out. So I guess I can keep going then, unless somebody else wants to stream. I don't really have any. I have nothing else really to stream, but I can keep going just so people aren't bored, I guess. Let me try this. Oh, that does work good. Future reference. Holding down delete and scrolling the mouse over stuff kills stuff super fast. This is an absolute mess in here. So I guess I'm taking suggestions. Anything you guys want to see, I am pretty much up to make whatever. More characters. I can do that. If you have any ideas for characters, feel free. I did actually. I had an idea for character earlier today. You do have the night pack, right? I'm pretty sure. So. Oh, another thing. Characters, when you first make them, they start off. Oh, that was weird. Huh. Well, normally they start off at 100% scale. Oh, while I'm thinking about it. Ah, crap. Alright, so that'll actually solve his weird camera issue. Now that I finally remembered to do it. No more weird camera issue. Nope, I still... I'm not entirely sure why it's... I hate cameras. I hate cameras. Good night, Shawnee. I never have problems spawning custom characters in. Because I never spawn custom characters in. What exactly is the problem that you're having? What, making a template should make everything work properly. I guess it depends on what you're doing exactly. Let me take this. Actually, you could ask Moose. Moose is using this guy here and this guy here, and that is what the what is it, Azure Blade or whatever? I can't remember. I think that's what it's called. No, he's using this guy. I'm sorry. This guy with the fire claws and this guy with the energy sword. Tend to fly off randomly. That is a physics bug. That's what I was talking about earlier with the attachments. You got to make sure that all the attachments are set to non-collidable and to no physics. Oh, you haven't made them templates. Okay, well that doesn't work. But I will show you something. You see where this template is in the world? It's right here. This guy right here spawns copies of that template. I can do it all day long and there's no problem. If I do it right where the template's at, I get thrown around. So that's some kind of weird glitch. Is that the kind of throwing around you're talking about? Yeah, it's definitely the collidable physics, and you also, this is what I'm trying to show you right now, do not store the templates anywhere where the character can walk. Weird stuff happens with templates right now. Even though they're invisible, they're not actually there. Strange stuff happens. So store them somewhere else, off the playing field. But yeah, collidable physics causes weird things to happen, even when they're attached together and it seems like they should have the same physics. They don't, and weird stuff happens. And Mike did actually address that. He said that that's one thing that they're going to fix, where if you create collidable things together, they're not going to get thrown a million miles apart. So hopefully, that's not very far off. Yeah, that's... Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Game locked up. Crash. I don't know why that happens. It's probably because those goofy saw blades. They use a ton of props, and I didn't code them to destroy themselves after any amount of time, so they just go flying off infinitely into space, and it probably caused some kind of crash. But yeah, most likely, what you're actually seeing is the whole physics thing. Okay, so custom characters. Give me a theme for a character. It's not as if we have that many clothing options at the moment. Oh, you wanted an alternate night. Let's see what I can do with alternate nights. This is the other thing. Whoa. It's the other thing I was going to say. Default characters start at about 100. But I find that that's really way too small. And the only reason I say that is because if you look at the grass and stuff, and you look at the size of cubified terrain, and you look at the size of pretty much everything, the character's really short in comparison. So if you size up the character a little bit when you first create them, I usually do it about 120. ish, depending. This knight's actually a little bigger than normal characters. I think it's just a big hat. Whoops. But anyway, okay, so. What kind of character do you need, Abra? Collidables off. Ugh. I don't know. This guy's just buggy. I'm not really sure what his deal is. Oh man. Purchase. Whoops. That is such a hat. It's so gonna happen. Later. Alright, so. Just scrolling through and seeing what I got to work with. All these tents, well, except for this one, all the tents seem like they'd make really good hats. Where are you at, Moose? I'm making your Black Knight. What do you want him to look like? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's gonna be cool looking. So first of all, what? There we go. One thing that people do when they're coloring stuff. Sleek, less cubish. One thing you gotta try to remember when you're coloring stuff. A lot of people say, oh, I want black, and they do that. Well, that looks terrible. Especially right now, you can kind of see it because I'm zoomed in, but when you're playing in-game, they just look like a big black smear. In reality, black is more like this. because you've got light reflections and everything, and at least you can see the definition of stuff. So until you get used to it, always, whatever your instinct is, just go a little bit brighter, and you'll find that you'll get much better results. And that goes for every color, not just black. Go a little bit less vivid, like everybody wants red, and then they go like this, and then they've got ridiculous ultraviolet red. But if you just go a little bit darker and a little bit less saturated, you will actually come out with much better colors. The other thing I don't understand, what the hell is this square that pops up? It doesn't do anything. You can't do anything with it. You can't move it. It just sits there right in the way. I think that helmet might be, whoops. Helmet might be a little too dark. That'll do. Later, Moose. No. What is happening? Ah, I'm stuck in. There's another thing. Crap. Remember to get out of Snap to Grid when you go into character. Otherwise, you can't do anything. Snap to Grid is extremely weird sometimes. You just kind of have to get used to it, because you'll often find it doing things that you don't expect it to do. And a lot of it has to do with when you're transitioning between different props. And sometimes it'll mostly just be whenever you transition between the controller and the mouse. There's tons of strange things that happen there. And it's not related to Snap to Grid at all. It just happens because for some reason their support of going between them isn't that great. See, he's even still a little too dark. I might have to lighten him up a little bit. Might have to. I think I will, actually. just the main parts. Everything else can be dark. Lighting is so weird in this game, though. You can have light directly on something and it still looks dark. That's actually pretty cool now. So, I'd really like to give this guy some like arm spikes and everything else. If only... If only. I just can't. Silly, silly socket system. Just realized that he's going to put his arms out. It's like I was saying earlier, you want to try to get the prop as close as you can before doing anything. That way you don't have to finagle with it too much. What is going on? It won't move. Okay. I don't know what's going on, but they refuse to swivel. Store wall? Oh, yeah. It kind of irritates me that everything is so oversized. Whoops. He's holding it backwards. I'm gonna have to change it and put it on an invisible weapon, which is fine. Whoops. Alright, so I need the curlicue to be pointing towards the skull. Something didn't do right. What is going on? He's holding it funny. Honestly, there's no optimal number really. I would say like 7-ish maybe isn't too bad. But like this mace right here is made out of way more than that. So it would completely blow the the props out of the water. And this one's not great either. But like this thing right here is made out of 5 props, 6 props. This one is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 props. This one's only 3, 4 props. So they vary kind of widely. This one is 8 props. This one's only 5. So yeah, it varies. You're already done with the entire forum? That's awesome. Mark is amazing. He is always willing to go the extra mile. And that's why I'm always willing to help him out. Oh, there's the problem. What the hell? These UI glitches are the pits. There we go. I think I need to make it a little less red though. That's alright though. Nah, I don't like the red. What do you think? Oh. What? These guys are immortal. It's weird. Oh, it has to be teams. This guy's on an enemy team. These guys are enemies. Okay. It's probably just a team. Well, I'm done. I'm getting a little sleepy. I don't want to stream anymore. So, if any of you guys are up to stream, now is the time. And I guess I will catch you all back on .org. That should be up again tomorrow. Way sooner than expected. So that's amazing. I get the presses. Wow. Holy cow. I get the polls back up so that everybody can get their opinions in. And yeah, I got nothing else. So, save and get out of here.